All right, so just as a reminder, guys, everything on your drawing should be finished. If there's anything that you're missing on your drawing, like if you're looking at my example here and you see something like if you didn't get the text done or you didn't know how to do that three-dimensional side, that's all going to be on the previous video, so you can go back and watch that. First thing that you want to do before we start this is we want to take our eraser and we want to get rid of some of these guidelines that we used before. We no longer need them. So you guys can go ahead and erase your center line that we drew at the very beginning. So that was the first thing we did. So you can get rid of that. Now again, you can see exactly why making these dark is not a good idea, because you can still see mine. But of course I kept mine dark so you guys could see it on the screen better. Hopefully I can cover those up, at least the ones on top of the tool. But most likely I will not get rid of the lines that are off of the tool. Okay. And also, too, since the last thing we did was the text, make sure that you have erased that original text box that we used. Get that erased, too. Some of you guys might have already done that. Okay. Do a little bit here. I'm working on 2 tools at a time. I'll at least get part of it erased. Okay, so all right. So to start this, guys, now remember the trick that I taught you guys, or I told you. I haven't taught it to you yet, but is that the trick with making things look like metal is that you will see that there will be abrupt changes between the values. So what I mean by that is that there will be areas on your tool where you will see a dark value next to a light value, and there will be absolutely no blending between those or transition. You will especially see things change like that at edges. So a lot of you guys might be wondering, well, how am I going to show an edge if I don't have a line right there? The way that you're going to do that is, and the way you describe an edge, is by having 2 contrasting values next to each other. So if you guys even just look at your tool and find an edge, you will notice that one side of it is dark and the other side of it is lighter, and that's how you see it. Because when we're finished with this, we do not want to see this contour drawing anymore, meaning we do not want to see outlines over any of these edges. So the hope is that while we shade this, those contour drawing will basically disappear, okay? And then the trick to making it look like metal is just going first and just shading in those abrupt changes that you see, okay? So I'm just going to kind of clean up this edge just a little bit to help me see it a little bit better. All right, so I'm going to be working back and forth between the my wrench right here and these pliers, okay? And I'll show you a little bit of everything, and then this, of course, will be posted on Canvas, and you can kind of watch the parts that you need help with again and over again. All right, so I find that the best thing to do with shading is I'm going to have all 3 pencils in my hand, okay? So I have my 6B, and I want to kind of put them in my hand in order, too, so that it saves me from checking which one I'm using. So I'm going to put 6B right here on the end, 3B in the middle, and I have 2 3Bs. I need a 4H. Let me see. Hold on. Oh, that's a 3B too. All right, and a 4H. All right, so 4H, 3B, and 6B, I have my pink eraser, and I also have I need an eraser handy if I need that, if I make things too dark, okay? So these are the two things I need. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to start in one section. So I don't shade, I'm not going to shade all over the whole tool. If I do that, what happens a lot of times is I start coloring it in like a coloring book, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to focus up here at the top of my tool. So everybody can start at the top, okay? So you can start at the top, have your little scrap piece of paper handy so you can use that to prep your edges. And what I'm going to do, when I look at this edge right here, so I'm looking at the side, I can see that it's really dark. It's not really dark. It's dark. It's like medium dark. I'm actually going to go ahead and start with my 3B in that area. And I'm just going to start plugging that value in. And again, what I should see is that outline going away, or that original contour drawing disappearing. Now it's not going to, I'm not going to fill in this whole thing with just this value because that's not the case. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pay attention to my tool because that's where the answer is. So I'm going to look at the shapes that these values are making. And I'm just going to start kind of filling in that information. So the answer is in front of me. It's not on my paper. It's in front of me. And I'm just going to work right now with just this side. So again, I'm just working with one section at a time. And what I find as far as why this is beneficial is that I do see the detail better. I'm less likely to just fill it in and ignore what I'm looking at. If I'm working in one small area, I tend to pick up those details better. It's kind of like when you're doing a blind contour drawing. You do a blind contour drawing, you're just looking at one section, and you're just focused on those details in that section. So I'm just going to work on this edge, kind of plug that in, and I can see it goes from dark to light and dark to light again. So I'm going to kind of avoid those areas that are light. And leave those alone. So I'm just working on these darker parts. Now there's a million different ways you can approach shading, guys. There are artists out there who actually like to plug in their darkest value first, so that would be black. So they find all the areas that look black, plug those in, and then go back and deal with their lighter values after that. That is a method that works really well. It's not one that works well for me, but maybe it would for you. So I'm just using that 3B and just kind of plugging that value in. You can see already that edge is starting to disappear. Might be kind of getting a glare. This is what's hard about graphite, is it gets kind of shiny. And then this stuff right here was a little lighter. It's not white, but it's a little lighter. Actually, I do have a couple spots that are white. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of fill those in with my lighter grays with my 4H. So anytime it needs to be light, I'm going to use my 4H. Anytime it needs to be sort of a medium value, I'm going to use my 3B. And if it needs to be really dark, I am going to use my 6B. So I do have some spots that are white, so I'm going to leave those alone. I'm just going to work around them. And now I'm just kind of plugging this stuff in for my light grays. Now, again, some of these spots gradate, and again, that means that they transition smoothly from one value to another. So they blend together. But there's other times where I see a defined edge. I'm going to pay attention to that info. So wherever it needs to be a defined edge, I'm going to plug that in. And so I'm just going to work on this section until I feel like I've got something pretty well established. Now, is it going to be done? No. I will probably go in and kind of tweak and adjust things later. But I think starting in a small area is a great way to kind of get your feet wet. So there's that start for that edge. Okay. And I am going to plug in just a little bit of 6B up here. This corner is really dark. And down here. So I'm picking where that, I'm looking for my darkest value, which is black, and I'm trying to find where that is, and then I'm just plugging it in. So after I'm done with that, then I can come up here and maybe start shading this section. Or maybe if I want to, I can start shading this bolt. And again, I'm going to pay attention to the shapes that those values are making. So kind of think about those paint by numbers kits that you see a lot of times. You know, if we were to go through and outline all of the shapes that those values are making, what would they look like? But I'm going to kind of stop on that. I'm going to move on to the wrench for people who are on the wrench. I'll do my best to kind of move my dock camera without letting it fall over. Okay. All right, same thing with this. So I think what I'll do is I will start on this part right here. So I'm just going to pick a part. And again, I like to pick something small just to start with. And I like picking something at the top because then my hand's not going over top of all that lead and smearing it out. Okay, so I'm going to start up here. My lines are kind of dark, so I'm going to kind of actually erase over this first. Your guys' line should already be light, but that'll help me hide those outlines. All right, so same thing again. I'm going to go through and I'm actually going to start my 3B again. So I'm starting with my medium here. And I just want to start in this section. And I'm going to basically kind of map out these shapes that I see these values making. It's a little lighter up there at the top. Now because this surface right here is a little bit more on the flat side, I'm probably going to see more of those gradual changes in the value. I see a really white shape right here, so I'm going to leave that alone. So even if you have to, you can kind of see right here, I'm trying to draw in where that highlight is. I see sort of a really bright highlight that I want to leave alone. So I'm going to kind of lightly draw an edge here on where I want to avoid shading. And then I'm just going to go in and kind of fill this in. So I'm just going to fill this in very lightly and then start building up for those other areas. Again, work one section at a time. And try to find those shapes that the values are making. The answers are in front of you, so keep your eye on the tool. The answer is not down on your piece of paper. The minute you start staring at your drawing and not your tool, that's when you're going to start making the information up. The trick is to keep your eyes on the tool, the actual tool. And again, I'm working around those areas that need to be white, so I like to call those the bright and shiny spots. So those really bright white shiny spots, I'm working around those. I want to avoid those. Now for those of you that have the gray paper, I will have white charcoal pencils in your sets, and you will plug in those bright shiny highlights with the white charcoal. For those of you that have white paper, you don't have to worry about doing that at all. It's already been done for you. You're just going to leave that paper exposed in those areas. So as you guys can see, the shading part is not something that goes by fast. In fact, it takes quite a while. It takes longer to shade it than it does to draw it. And then I'm just going to go back and forth between my pencils depending on what value I need. So right now I'm going to fill in some lighter values with my 4H pencil. And anytime I feel like I'm losing something or things are getting blended in, the reason for that happening is going to be because I probably don't have enough contrast between my values. So if you start to see edges getting lost or things getting blended in, again, it's because you probably need to go through and add some more contrast. So now I'm going to go and add some 6B. Okay, and you're just going to keep working one section at a time. Once you feel like you've got a good start on one section, move to a different section. Kind of work on your tool from the top, go all the way down to the bottom. I will, let's see here, I've got some drawings here that are a little bit more finished. Here's top part of this wrench right here. You can see I've got some white charcoal in there. I'll give you guys the white charcoal tomorrow. Here's, oh gosh, that's so hard to see it with the light on it. Let me see if that helps. Is that better? It's a little fuzzy. But problem with the graphite is that it gets shiny, so it can be hard to see with light directed on it. And then I have another one. Here's this one. Okay. Again, guys, this was not done in like 15 minutes. This takes a lot of time. Okay. It takes a lot of time. Let me see the lights. Really hard to see it. That looks better. So you can see that. Okay, just work one section at a time, one section at a time. And I've got my other tool here on the white paper. I'll show you a little bit more finished on that. Let's see if I can. Again, it's kind of hard to, well, oh, that looks better. So you can see that. So again, some of those things I've been talking about, when you look like right here, again, whenever the form changes really fast, like there's a big form change, like this is flat, that's going right up, that's where you're going to see some big value changes. From the top of this to the side of that, that's how you're going to show the edge. You don't need an outline to do that. The difference between the side here and the top, that's where you're going to see those big changes. You're going to see a light right next to a very dark. But then some of these areas where it's a little bit more flat, like right here, again, you can still see the shapes that the values are making. But there are areas where it kind of blends out, and it blends and transitions. That's the gradation right there. That's gradation. Okay? When everybody gets to a point where they're in a good place with the top of your tool, then I'll start talking about the handles. Okay? I don't want to talk about that quite yet until you've got a good start on the top. Okay? And then cast shadows will be after we're finished with actually shading the tool. All right? maybe it'll be better to do this without the light on there. So let me just kind of slide these two so you can see the top together. Okay. So I'm going to just kind of pause this for a little bit, walk around, see if you guys need any help. And then I'll come back and do a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and, I don't know, maybe I'll go down here and work on that wrench, on that part, since I've got my wrench set up. So again, I don't know, I like kind of starting here in the middle, so I like to start off with my 3B. So again, I'm going to work in this section right below here. I want to try to get this edge that kind of angles out and towards me established. So I've got the top section kind of worked on. Now I need to work on the bottom and really get that . Now I've got a big section, and it's funny, this section right here on my tool has a lot of light in it, but then it has some really dark darks on it. So, and those dark darks are making quite some very defined shapes in here. So the shapes are kind of sharp looking. And hopefully as I work on this, you'll start to see this edge pop out. I need to kind of clean up this. This is going to get really dark. So it's like that paint by number scenario I gave you. What shape are these shadows and values making? Get some 6B in there. And there's the beginning of that, and hopefully now that'll start popping out. And I always leave my highlights a little bit bigger than what they need to be, so then that gives me room to kind of fix them up and make adjustments. So I'm going to go now and kind of thin this up a little bit. Okay, so hopefully now that's starting to pop up. Me too. And then just going through this. This is actually pretty light over here on this side. And then I have edges that are white. Now again, the thing that's working against me right now is I have these dark outlines still. This is why I make such a big deal out of you guys drawing lightly, because we don't want to see these when you are finished. So I'm just going to kind of lightly erase over this stuff so that hopefully I can hide them. I mean, I'll still see my drawing. I just want to see it less. The more shapes that you'll find, guys, the better this will look. All right, so we will continue these shading later next week. We'll work our way down the tool.